Most names in psychiatry fade into the past, buried under new research, new treatments, or new faces. But some names don't fade. They get buried, on purpose. In the 1940s, one doctor was given full control inside Bellevue Hospital, one of the busiest psychiatric institutions in New York City at the time. She specialized in children, kids with behavioral issues, trauma, or symptoms no one understood. She believed even toddlers could have schizophrenia, and she claimed to have the cure. Electroshock therapy. Real voltage, real seizures, no anesthesia, no sedation, just electricity. She ran tests, collected data, and shocked over 500 children under her care. And then she disappeared from the headlines. Her name was Dr. Lauretta Bender. Lauretta Bender was born in 1897, a time when psychiatry was still experimental. Things like mental issues were misunderstood, and when it came to children, completely ignored. But Bender noticed what others didn't. She studied medicine in Chicago and trained under Adolph Meyer at Johns Hopkins, one of the most influential psychiatrists of the early 20th century. Meyer believed mental illness came from both biology and life experience. Bender took that with her. She moved up quickly in the ranks. Smart, focused, unafraid of controversy. Eventually, she landed at Bellevue Hospital in New York, a grim, overcrowded facility where the most vulnerable were often forgotten, especially the children. However, she watched them, withdrawn, silent, aggressive. Today we'd say trauma or autism, but back then those words didn't exist. So she gave it her own name, childhood schizophrenia, and once she gave it a name, she believed that she could cure it. Imagine being 3 years old and waking up strapped to a hospital bed. No explanation, confused, and in a white room. And then all of a sudden, a surge of electricity ripping through your brain. That was the treatment. Electroconvulsive therapy. Bender believed she could reset the mind of disturbed children. She said it worked better on younger brains because they were more pliable, more willing to be rewired. She didn't just test these ideas either. She ran with it. Children, some still in diapers, were shocked again and again. No anesthesia, no muscle relaxants, just bite straps and nurses holding them down. And it didn't happen in secret either. It happened at Bellevue Hospital in New York, one of the most respected psychiatric institutions in the country. She documented everything too, and even published it. She even went as far as standing at conferences and calling the results promising. The medical journals cheered. They called her bold, a pioneer. She claimed the children were calmer after treatment, less aggressive, more obedient. But no one asked what the obedience cost, or what those children became when they left. Over 500 children, shocked, for science, for progress, for a theory. Because in her eyes, and in the system's eyes, they weren't kids. They were broken minds in tiny bodies. And she wasn't trying to fix them. But shocking kids wasn't her only claim to fame. Lauretta Bender created something else that would haunt the field of psychiatry for years. The Bender Gestalt visual motor test. It's simple at first glance. 9 shapes, lines, squares, circles. You draw them as you see them. But Bender didn't just see this as drawing. She saw this as a roadmap to the children's minds. She claimed that these tests would detect neurological damage, indicators of mental illness, and even early signs of brain trauma. But the test wasn't used in hospitals. It spread everywhere. It became a cornerstone of child psychiatric evaluations. Schools, juvenile detention centers, even prisons. Bender's name was on forms that decided the fate of children, who would stay in a hospital or who would go home. But it was never perfect. Over time, experts pointed out the flaws. The shapes were vague, the results were too easy to misinterpret. You could get 2 different diagnoses for the same drawing. One doctor saying schizophrenia, the other saying autism, or something worse. Yet despite the circumstances, it stuck. It was a fast, easy way to label kids, a way to define them, normal or disturbed. And despite the controversies, the Bender Gestalt test is still used in some places today. It's not as common as it once was, though, but Bender's name, that legacy never fully faded, just like her treatment methods. But what about the real people who were on the other side of that voltage? Let's take a look at one. Ted Chabazinski. 6 years old, he was taken to Bellevue, diagnosed with that terrifying label of childhood schizophrenia. A label Bender was way too eager to apply to every troubled child. He, of course, remembers the pain, the confusion, the being cold and waking up in a plain white room, the way the nurses held him down, strapping his body to the table while the machine hummed to life, the violent shock coursing through his small frame. Ted remembers the shock itself, but he also remembers the aftermath, the way his mind went numb, the way he shut down. A child that once had hopes and dreams, now silenced. But for him, it didn't stop there. He said that he wanted to die at just 6 years old. And he wasn't the only one either. How many others had the same fate? No names, no records, just more bodies in beds. More children who were forgotten. But here's the thing. She didn't kill them. Bender's therapy didn't necessarily end in death, but it left something just as haunting, if not worse. A lifelong trauma. Some kids survived, yes, but at what cost? They were left with permanent damage, psychological scars, and emotional numbness. Some, of course, would go on to live relatively normal lives, but many others, they were never the same. The doctors, the system, it, of course, moved on. But the children, yet again, were forgotten, their voices lost. They might never know how many were lost to the treatment, but what's clear is this. For every child who survived, a part of them was definitely lost forever. So after everything, Lauretta Bender kept working. She didn't slow down. Despite the mounting evidence, despite the growing concerns over her methods, she kept going. For her, the science was the most important thing. The world kept applauding her courage, her innovation. She published articles, she gave lectures, she stayed in the system. Still respected, still trusted. But unfortunately for her, the 60s rolled in, and the tides were shifting. By now, more voices had emerged, voices calling out the danger of ECT. People started noticing the side effects, the emotional wreckage, the brain damage, the seizures that didn't stop, the children who couldn't even speak anymore, the ones who had been left in mental anguish for years. The research started to pile up against her, and Lauretta Bender, she couldn't keep up. Her theories, once groundbreaking, began to look outdated, and even harmful. The field of psychiatry shifted. The concept of childhood schizophrenia slowly faded. With that, new theories emerged. Autism, PTSD, trauma, things she couldn't or wouldn't see. Her treatments didn't fit anymore. But even as her methods fell into disrepute, her legacy didn't disappear. Her Bender Gestalt test is still used today, used to diagnose children, used in schools, used in clinics, and still used in prisons. It's still in the textbooks, and her name is still tied to it. Lauretta Bender never faced the consequences of her actions. She passed away in 1987. The cause of death officially recorded as natural causes. But the legacy she left behind wasn't just academic. It was a legacy tied to the children she had shocked, whose voices had been silenced in favor of scientific ambition. Her methods might have been abandoned, but the damage remains. Her name, still remembered, still associated with her groundbreaking, controversial work. While she didn't kill them, the system she worked in failed them. Lauretta Bender believed she was helping, genuinely, that her research had meaning, that shocking a child's brain could somehow bring peace to their minds. And in that pursuit, she ignored the pain, she ignored the screams, she ignored the innocent, helpless children. But back then, children didn't matter the same way that they do now. They weren't seen as full people. They were seen as experiments, problems to fix, cases to study. And for decades, her work was praised. No one stopped her, no one questioned her, not the hospitals, not the journalists, not the government. Why? Because she had credentials? Because she was a doctor? Even today, we still see echoes of this in institutions, in experiments, in elderly homes, in the blind trust we give authority. Her name may be forgotten by most, but the kids she shocked, they didn't forget. Some are still alive, still trying to explain what happened, still trying to heal. That's why this story matters so much, because it's not just about Lauretta Bender. It's about what happens when no one listens to the ones who can't speak up. And unless we remember, it might happen again someday. Hello, everybody. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. These stories, of course, aren't always easy to hear, but they definitely do matter. If this one stuck with you in any way, drop a like, leave a comment, and maybe even consider subscribing. I have a lot more to come. Thank you guys again for watching Morbid World, and I'll see you guys next time.